And it was a charismatic spiritual leader who was taking them through the processes. And so 50 of them went into the Sweat Lodge and 3 died.
You are listening to the Why Smart Women podcast, the podcast that helps smart women work out why we repeatedly make the wrong decisions and how to make better ones. From relationships, career choices, finances, to faux fur jackets and kale smoothies. Every moment of every day, we're making decisions. Let's make them good ones. I'm your host, Annie McCubbin, and as a woman of a certain age, I've made my own share of really bad decisions. Not my husband. I don't mean him, though. I did go through some shockers to find him. And I wish this podcast had been around to save me from myself. This podcast will give you insights into the working of your own brain, which will blow your mind. I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which I'm recording and you are listening on this day. Always was, always will be, Aboriginal land. Well, hello, smart women, and welcome to this week's episode of the Why Smart Women podcast. As usual, today I am broadcasting from the northern beaches of Sydney, New South Wales, Australia, and it is another absolutely stunningly perfect winter day. It's midwinter here now, and it'll get up to about 17, 18 degrees. And every day in the past week, I have been swimming in the ocean. So I'm like some sort of Olympic champion. I get in, I splash about for 4 minutes. It's freezing cold, and I get out and spend a lot of time congratulating myself. Then I have a coffee and I come, and it's wonderful. Anyway, not talking about swimming today. What we're going to talk about is spiritual retreats in general, and I guess spirituality in general, what it means, and is it actually helpful? Because there's a strong level of societal acceptance that if you're spiritual, you're probably superior, calmer, more generous, and have a better perspective on life. That is not my experience, because the people that I have come across in my life that have called themselves the most spiritual, in my consideration, have been the most annoying. And, David.
Well, that's unforgivable.
Yeah, they've been annoying and superior and often really mean and misguided. Anyway, I'm sure there's a lot of people who have spiritual beliefs who are delightful, but there are some spiritual beliefs which are just plain dangerous. So today I am joined by David, who is going to interview me. Well, we're just really going to chat about it.
Interview. Look, I actually did have a question. I mean, because I know that the spiritual and the pseudo spiritual and the sort of the oomy-goomy world it has been a cause of irritation for you. I think it's funny that you just find people annoying. But I mean, do you think that this is current? I mean, do you think that our sort of slightly dangerous flirtation with the pseudo spiritual was a couple of decades ago? And
I think it's worse.
What, really?
Oh, sure.
What, you think that it's still a
pervasive force for bad?
A pervasive force for bad.
Sure.
Where might people encounter it?
All right. So this was sent to me today. I won't say where this is, but this is Women's Wisdom Sacred Circle.
Oh, it sounds wholesome.
A soul-nourishing fireside gathering of connection, cacao, and release. Hang on.
Cacao?
Apparently cacao... Isn't cacao just chocolate? Isn't that what cacao is?
Some people have a spiritual experience with chocolate, I believe.
Yeah, right. Step into a soul-nourishing half-day women's circle held in a warm, private home nestled in, I won't say where, in case they sue me. This sacred experience is a space for you to let go of emotional weight, reconnect with your inner self, and receive the support of a heartfelt sisterhood.
What you lose weight in the nicely nestled home, do you?
Emotional weight.
Emotional weight. Oh, okay. All right. Together,
we gather by the fire to sip ceremonial cacao. Okay, I've got a real thing about about the word sip. I can't stand it. I can't
Sipping.
stand it in a book.
It's intentionally taking a small amount into your lips.
As soon as I read that in a sentence in a book, I just have to stop reading. I can't stand it.
Can I tell you that sounds very, very similar to the all-male ritual that I have every Saturday afternoon after the football game.
Hang on, we'll get back to that. Can I just finish this, and then we'll get back to your all-male ritual. So I have to go back now so I can really get into the flow of the sentence.
Okay.
Together.
I'll be quiet.
We'll gather by the fire to sip ceremonial cacao, receive healing sound therapy, big red flag for me there, and gently reconnect with the parts of ourselves we've forgotten or hidden, another red flag. So, ceremonial cacao to open the heart. I don't know what that even means. Sound healing and guided meditation. Sound healing, what is that? Letting go and calling in. What is letting go and calling in?
Letting go. Well,
what am I calling in?
You're
calling in the dogs?
Calling in the good stuff. Calling in the...
Oh, God. No, I'm exhausted reading it. Nourishing soup and winter treats by the fire. Oh, my God. What are we, 5? Therapeutic... Oh, here we go. Another red flag. Therapeutic grade essential oils for release.
What makes them therapeutic grade?
Correct.
Essential oils, so what, like lavender and yang?
Yeah, but why are they
yang?
therapeutic? Why do they have a grade? What's therapeutic
Probably
around them?
makes them more expensive.
Sacred sisterhood and connection. And there's 2 guides. And I tell you what, it won't be cheap to sit in someone's lounge room. And that's what it'll be. You'll be sitting in someone's lame lounge room and they'll probably have a heater. Then they'll go into the kitchen and they'll get some chocolate and they'll pretend that it's some sort of sacred cacao, and then they'll put it in small ceramic cups, and then they'll make you sit in a circle around the heater with and maybe hold hands and hum, and then someone will come out with one of those bowls and go
And you'll
and
sip
they'll make
mindfully.
a sound, and the inference is, number 1, that you can be healed, and number 2, that 3 things. 1, you can be healed. 2, you need healing. Why do you need healing? And 3, I don't know what the third one was. It's annoying though.
Yeah, look, I'd put it to you, that maybe your skeptic radar is an overdrive at the moment, because what you're describing is, I know that this is the Smart Women podcast and you're not interested in talking about anything male and football and those kinds of things, but one of my favourite times of the week is after our football game. I'll take the brazier by the side of the pitch. We'll have a fire. We will sip.
You don't
not
sip. You
cacao.
just drink. You just drink. Beer.
We'll sip. Asahi, from the pure beer making facilities in Japan.
Yeah, so you have a bottle of beer. Go on.
And yes, we'll make therapeutic noises.
What are they?
We'll rip the shit out of each other. We'll tease each other. We'll identify moments when people made embarrassing and humiliating accidents during the game.
Are you healed by this process?
We will laugh, and it will be cathartic. And at the end of the day, we will say, it's great to be a 56er, and that's what we call ourselves. And it's actually a really nice human moment of sitting
connection.
Around. Yeah.
Well, I do the same thing.
Exactly.
I go to the gym,
what's
and
wrong?
then I have a coffee.
Exactly. So
I don't have to call it a healing ceremonial cacao sipping circle.
But I do feel
and
healed
I can't
and
charge
cleansed.
people for it.
I feel healed and cleansed at the end of it.
You've had a cleansing ale. You've had a beer and a sausage. How is that? It sounds a lot more grounded than sitting in someone's lounge room, sipping and pretending that you're somehow releasing something from your heart.
I guess it's the way that we talk about it. Because the essential human experience...
Well, the frame-up matters.
Okay, why... Okay,
the frame matters.
Why does the frame matter?
You go and have a beer and a sausage after a game, and you all sit
and a
around.
fire. The fire is really important.
Yeah, because it's cold.
Yep.
And it's a nice... I agree. Sitting around a fire is one of my absolute favourite things to do. And then talking to my friends and having a glass of wine and having a laugh. What I'm not doing is drowning in earnestness. I'm not pretending that I'm facilitating somebody's healing. I'm not pretending in that moment, and nobody else is, and I'm sure none of the men in your group are, that you're releasing your some sort of deep inner child part of you. The thing is that there's a strong inference, and this is the problem with it, and why I know I sound sort of acerbic when I talk about it, but it's like moderate religion leads to extreme religion, which is problematic. Moderate little healing circles then lead to people going on retreats where they'll have something like a frog toxin, or how do you pronounce it? Ayahuasca, and then people die. And the other result
not everybody dies.
Yeah, and
only a few.
Yeah, that's right. Who cares? It's the elevation of a normal human gathering of people to something that has this spiritual element that I object to.
Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, why? If you acknowledge that it is it's kind of natural human, instinct, and there are benefits from that sense of community and having that time together. Why can't you, in the words of Mel Robbins, just let them? Let them do it. Why do you feel
you cannot quote a book you haven't read?
Well, I don't need to read the book because I've read the cover of the book. Okay. And it's one of those wonderful self-help books. If you read the cover and you understand the title, then that's all you really need to know. And it's this idea,
feel the fear and do it anyway.
If you don't like these people elevating a normal community event into something spiritual, why don't you just let them? Why the need to to point it out and warn people that it might be dangerous?
Because
I'm not saying it's unvalid, but I'm interested in your reason for it.
Well, because I did just say, and you clearly weren't listening to me, that from the moderate to the extreme, not all of it is dangerous, but as soon as you start, number one, human beings are extremely prone to following charismatic people.
That's right, yeah.
Right. So as soon as someone puts the word spiritual in front of leader, I think we're in danger.
Okay, yeah.
Because they're going to say stuff. Someone thinks they're endowed with some elevated sense of self or purpose or plugged into something, and they're going to start telling people to do things that are potentially dangerous. Now, I'm not saying that a cacao ceremony, as irritating as it is to me with the sisterhood of warm female wisdom, I'm not saying that is dangerous. But if you go into the wilds of South America and you
take ayahuasca,
you're in danger.
Yeah.
There is danger to that. In order to do what? To get where?
Well, I mean, I think that people go in that direction because they have heard that others have had very kind of meaningful experiences. They've had the vision dream. They've had the hallucination, and then suddenly everything in their waking life makes sense to them. And
well, then they have to go back to the real world, don't they? So you have this experience of, I don't know, some sort of breaking through this. I mean, there's this whole sense of you need to understand that we're all connected, that sense of universality that people talk about, right?
Yeah.
That we're all one.
Yes.
That is some sort of elevated sense of self, or elevated sense of the self being connected to everything.
Yes.
And then you stop being so connected to the ego. Yes?
Yeah. And you start to
Start to what?
Contribute to the collective.
Do you?
Yeah.
Really?
I think so.
How do you start to contribute to the collective?
Well, if you have a meaningful experience where you feel like you're bigger than something else, then your own little dramas don't prevent you from, doing the things that help everybody thrive. So you'll farm the crops, or you'll bring them in.
But will you? Where's the data that suggests that people that go on retreats or spend a lot of time meditating actually are greater societal contributors?
Well, there'd have to be something. Otherwise, those things wouldn't be part of human tradition. They wouldn't,
Oh, that's the point. Part of human tradition. I just think we need to believe in something bigger because we don't like the fact that the whole fact is that it's just random.
Yeah, but it's actually very functional to believe in something bigger. Because if no man is an island, no smart woman is an island. If you thought that your own experience was living was the most important thing, if you were so thoroughly self-centered that you couldn't see that you were connected to a family or a community.
But
or
you can be a
to
humanist.
nation.
I'm a humanist. I'm connected to other people. And I don't think I'm a particularly selfish person. I think I'm quite giving.
Yes, absolutely. So maybe it's the when you say we go from the moderate
to the extreme.
To the extreme, and
Yeah.
so we should get rid of the moderate.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm illuminating the danger of something that is just so commonplace.
Yeah.
It's so commonplace. And then, as soon as you hear the word healing, when it's everywhere, this notion of... I was just listening to Mind Valley, who are a very, very large organisation with a lot of social media reach, talking about this guy because that's how we end up with this idea that we don't need science, we don't need modern medicine, because we can all just eat properly and be healed. We can just heal each other or heal ourselves. It's very dangerous.
I think the journey, or when you move on the spectrum from the moderate to the extreme, where I think it gets corrupted, and quite clearly corrupted, is when individuals who are part of that experience gain power from the way that they define themselves.
Of course.
So you don't like the term the spiritual healer.
I don't like the term spiritual healer or spiritual leader. I mean, look at all the, we now find out that these sort of yoga doyens were predators. Because as soon as someone gets a whiff of power, then as soon as we endow somebody, as soon as they get a whiff of power, and as soon as we endow somebody with great wisdom and great spiritual wisdom, we're in trouble.
I guess that's the idea in that other book, the title of which I read, which was "If you meet Buddha on the road, kill him."
Did you actually read it?
No, I read the cover.
Okay.
And I might even be misquoting the cover, but it is the idea of Buddhism as a spiritual tradition. There have been a lot of highly celebrated Buddhist leaders. I heard somebody make this rather disruptive comment that if Buddha was able to come back today, if the person, if Siddhartha the Buddha was able to, come back and have a look at all the statues of Buddha and all the trinkets of Buddha and all the Buddha T-shirts and all the Buddha products, then he'd commit suicide because he'd be so depressed. That is not what the essential Buddha's teaching was about, that elevation of people to spiritual leadership. And I think we can all recognise that when you elevate a human being, they have power, and power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah. Also, this notion that Buddhism is just this endlessly gentle thing. In its original state, people could develop that sense of depersonalization, that sense of separation, because then it made them able to fight more effectively.
Yeah.
So I think everything gets this mantle over the top of it, sort of gentle, elevated, illuminating presence. And I don't think it is. And I had a really good point then as well about leaders. What did you just say about leaders a second ago before I said that?
I think I said, well, I was talking about, it's a fairly well established principle that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, that it is sometimes the human condition when you are elevated to have power over people, some of your more self-centered instincts and biases might be activated, and you will use that power for yourself rather than for other people.
Yeah, and it really doesn't matter how small that elevation is. Look, as soon as somebody puts a hat on that says, I'm a healer, I can facilitate healing, I understand what's going on for you, maybe better than you do, then I think we're in trouble. Unless
What if that person's a doctor?
Fine.
And they've trained.
Perfect.
And they wear a hat.
Perfect. I approve of the doctor hat. I approve of that.
Because they've studied science.
Yep.
They've learned how to heal people. And so when they make a promise,
when they make a promise, well, they are way less definitive.
Yeah.
We watched that film the other night, Inside Out.
That was a terrific film.
Yeah, and I suggest everybody should watch Inside Out 1 and 2 because it talks about the workings of the mind.
But isn't that just a silly children's animation?
It's just perfect.
Yeah.
As far as I can see, it is the best explanation that there's just, our brain is a committee and these thoughts, feelings, etc. are just jostling for position all the time, and that your sense of self comes from an accumulation of your memories. Mm-hmm. And then you make decisions off the back of that. So this notion of let's get down there to our, find your true self, talk to your higher self. What higher self? There's no higher self. Where is this higher self?
Yeah. I mean, for people who don't understand what Annie and I are talking about, there are 2 animated films.
So good. You explain them. They're really good.
They've come out of Pixar, and they basically sort of dramatise a metaphorical explanation for the way that the brain works. And that is that there are emotions and they all serve a purpose, and when they work well together, then you could say that the human being is regulated. And what's nice in the sequel to Inside Out 2, is it actually acknowledges the changes that happen in puberty and the other emotions that come on board. And look, let's not tell the story and just recommend that you have a look at it.
Because the fundamental was that when she was smaller, the emotions that she had were fear, anger, joy, disgust. What was the other one? And sadness. Oh, perfect. And sadness. Yeah. And then she reaches puberty and she gets ennui, which is so funny. Yeah, whatever. Anxiety, which just absolutely wigs out.
Embarrassment and jealousy, or envy.
And envy, and also sarcasm comes in there. The sarcasm is so funny.
Yeah, from ennui.
Yeah. And I think it just explains so beautifully that our sense of self shifts, right?
Yes, that it's dynamic.
It's dynamic, and who are we? Who are we? Well, we are a amalgamation of the memories that we hold, and then the belief systems that are formed off the back of those.
Yes. Yeah.
And we are a changing organism. So the idea of a true self is tricky.
Now, some would say that the experience of watching that kind of film, where you get some insight into the way that your mind works, is a pathway to healing, perhaps. If you understand your emotions, if you accept them, if you can work with them constructively, psychological flexibility, etc., you might make yourself better, which is another way of saying you might heal yourself if you are...
Oh, I'm not saying that we don't need to actually analyse our thinking and our feelings and our belief systems and our attitudes. I think it's absolutely essential because we're being driven by things that are very errant and out of date. I think do go to a psychologist, do think about it, do analyse it, do talk to a coach.
So it's okay to have someone who is qualified to lead you,
yes.
Someone who might teach you, or someone who might help you to understand, your instincts and intuitions around mystery, the things that can't be explained. And so
I don't know what you mean by that.
Well, I think we have to acknowledge that for some people, their spiritual life, their spiritual self, their instincts, their intuitions around the unknown and the mystery of it all. For some people, that's important.
Sure.
And it is helpful for them to have someone who will guide them in their thought process. And so they may be go
to church.
You're going to go to church.
Yeah.
They may have a spiritual coach.
Yeah. What?
Okay. Yeah, I knew you'd hate that. Well, someone who can help them to make sense of it and who can lead their spiritual self.
Sure.
But it becomes dangerous and counterproductive when the kickback for the spiritual leader becomes access, access to people's wallets, access to people's bodies,
Well, how many people died on that retreat? Where was that retreat? Do you remember?
Okay, so that was the 2009 Arizona Sweat Lodge retreat. So there were 50 people on the retreat, and it was a charismatic spiritual leader who was taking them through the processes, and so 50 of them went into the Sweat Lodge and 3 died. So Not all of them. Only three
only
people.
3. That's a great percentage, isn't it?
And I think the error there was the duty of care of the spiritual leader was not sufficient to keep people safe from the dangers of that extreme experience.
Well, if you take a step even prior to that, to the lack of duty of care, what are they hoping to achieve by sitting in a sweat lodge? We're just pausing for a minute to hear a word from our sponsor.
The Why Smart Women podcast is brought to you by Coup, a boutique training, coaching and media production company. A coup, spelt C-O-U-P, is a decisive act of leadership, and decisive leadership requires critical thinking. So well done you for investing time to think about your thinking. If your leadership or relationships would benefit from some grounded and creative support, if you want team training or a conference presentation, reach out for a confidential one-on-one conversation using the link in the description, or go to coup.co. Well, that which does not kill you makes you stronger.
Okay. I just think.
I think that's the thought process. You know, you put
you'd sweat and have some sort of maybe hallucinogenic experience.
Look, it is definitely part of many, many traditions where you put yourself under physical duress, where it becomes intolerable, and so the mind has to go to another level. So it's, in the Catholic tradition, it's the hair shirt. It's the nuns who would wear the circe thing, the cord around their thigh that had spikes in it.
Yeah, but that's the appeal to antiquity. Just because we've always done it doesn't mean it has any value.
No, but it's more than that. It's something about the exhausting experience where the spirit, has to triumph.
Yeah, sure. Go on a hike, climb the mountain.
Okay, in Islamic tradition, there's the
Hajj.
There's the pilgrimage.
Yeah.
And there's the standing in the sun for hours and hours and hours. You stand. But in secular worlds, people do marathons.
Sure, I get it.
I know what it is, because the physical duress, if you can overcome it, you probably get a shot of endorphins.
And you get a shot of endorphins. Look, there's no two ways about it that pushing yourself past where your brain says, I can't do this anymore, to a certain degree is really healthy.
Yes.
I do it nearly every day at the gym.
Yes, but you do it in moderation.
I do it in moderation, and I understand the chemical process that's going on in my brain from it. And it does change the way I think about things. I do push myself. I didn't want to get up this morning. It was cold. And I thought, I'm just going to have one sleep in. But then I put myself forward 2 hours and I go, I'm going to feel better for it. So I do get up. I've taken up running. I'm not very good at it. I don't particularly like it. I'm very slow. But I get a sense of, I pushed myself through that. It's an achievable goal. I can probably do something else further in the day. I get that.
Okay, so your day-to-day reality, you are somewhere on that spectrum of, putting yourself into physical discomfort or physical challenge, and you do get a benefit for it. I do. And it works for you.
It does.
And look, as you're describing that, I do actually recall, I don't know whether you've ever shared this on the podcast, but you actually did go on a quasi-spiritual retreat that almost killed you.
I did.
Because you were in the care of people who were not qualified to manage that particular process, and they pushed you in a very extreme situation, in a absolutely irresponsible. And,
I had an asthma attack.
They almost killed you.
I had an allergenic response. I had a terrible asthma attack, and instead of getting me to a hospital, they kept saying it's her mother, and someone was squeezing me from behind. Yeah,
didn't he sort of put you into a kind of like a full Nelson headlock or something like that?
They just squeezed me from behind and kept saying some ridiculous thing about get off me mum, as if asthma, there's a direct line between asthma. They used to think it was asthma and the smothering love of the mother, which of course is a complete heap of crap, because asthma is an allergenic issue. It's an inflammation of the airways, and it was provoked because I came too close to a plant that had triggered me. It's got nothing to do with my childhood.
And what happened? When did they finally work out that you were in danger?
Well, somebody said she doesn't look well, and they got me to hospital, and I was 3 days in intensive care.
What, because you couldn't deal with your mother issues?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. My dear little mother was so unfair. My darling, adorable mother. How dare they? How dare they? And that's the trouble. This is the trouble with retreats and people with small minds in positions of power. So that, it's like the frog toxin, the Cambo ceremonies up on the Northern Rivers. There's been a couple of deaths up there, up on the Northern Rivers in Australia. They get this frog toxin, poor bloody frog. I think we've covered this before. I remember saying poor frog. I think we've covered it before, so I won't go over and over it. But they get this frog toxin and it burns them, and then they purge. And apparently there's some spiritual advantage to purging, vomiting and whatever, and then you're better. But there's no follow-up on any of this. No one tracks it. There's no data on whether or not people, after they go through these extreme spiritual events, actually are better people, happier people. Do they lead more productive lives? Or do they just go, where's the next time I can go and smear a bit of toad on me and vomit? I mean, I don't know. It just seems mad.
What's the stuff that you take before a colonoscopy in order to...
Oh, Pico Prep.
Yeah, Pico Prep.
Pico Prep.
Yeah, I think they're missing a major marketing opportunity. Spiritual cleanse with 2 litres of Glyco Prep. Just poo it all out,
It's just funny. Anyway, that was what I wanted to discuss today, because this thing came across my feed about this women's wisdom circle.
Nestled and
sipping. Oh, God almighty. Anyway, that'll do for now. Thanks for listening in. Sorry. What?
Well, something positive to sit on the end of it, just so that it's not this is bad, stay away from it. From the broken terracotta pottery of spiritual elevation. Let's acknowledge the fact that there are people who make money out of it. There are people who get egoic hits by being the most powerful person in the room or on the planet. What's the encouraging alternative?
Look, we know for a fact that the most protective thing that you can do for your brain is exercise, stimulation, a good diet, and community. Community is everything to us, absolutely everything. And be with people. People are fantastic. It's going to absolutely support you. We know that the fact that your neuronal activity is absolutely accelerated when you're with other people, because you've got to respond, you've got to talk, you've got to listen, you've got to hold their stories. Talking to people, communicating is fabulous. Having relationships and friendships, and I get it, but just don't collect the lonely and take them into an environment where you're selling them something that's empty. Yes? Don't do that to people. It's horrible. There's all these fantastic charities you can go and work in a soup kitchen. Give something back to the community. These are fantastic communities that aren't promising you that they're going to heal you.
So I've got permission to stay for an extra hour around the fire next week after the football game? I don't know how we got
to that, but sure. And when have I ever said to you, come home now? I never have.
No, you don't, because
I never have.
But you keep organising social events on a Sunday evening when I want to stay and play.
Anyway,
maybe speak to your spiritual advisor.
Yeah, I'm going to go and get a spiritual. I'm going to become one. Do you know what? I'd be so good as a guru.
Would you?
Oh,
really?
Man.
Would you keep your own name, or would you change your name?
Anushka.
You'd be Anushka. What would your totem be?
What's it?
Your animal, would you?
My meerkat.
No, Groodle.
Anushka. Anushka Gudinsky. That would be my name.
It sounds like you'd also speak with a Russian accent and give people psilocybin.
Gudinsky.
We just need to get 9 perfect strangers to come and sit in your lounge room.
That's right. Anyway, on that happy note, I'm sorry if I got negative about it. I just don't like the vulnerable people. I don't like people taking advantage of other people. I don't like it. I hope you're all having a lovely day wherever you are in the world. And from DY in the northern beaches of Sydney, Australia, on a perfect winter's afternoon. See you later. Thank you, David. Bye. Thanks for tuning into Why Smart Women with me, Annie McCubbin. I hope today's episode has ignited your curiosity and left you feeling inspired by my anti-motivational style. Join me next time as we continue to unravel the fascinating layers of our brains and develop ways to sort out the fact from the fiction and the over 6,000 thoughts we have in the course of every day. Remember, intelligence isn't enough. You can be as smart as paint, but it's not just about what you know, it's about how you think. And in all this talk of whether or not you can trust your gut, if you ever feel unsafe, whether it's in the street, at work, in a car park, in a bar, or in your own home, please respect that gut feeling. Staying safe needs to be our primary objective. We can build better lives, but we have to stay safe to do that. And don't forget to subscribe, rate and review the podcast and share it with your fellow smart women and allies. Together, we're hopefully reshaping the narrative around women and making better decisions. So until next time, stay sharp, stay savvy, and keep your critical thinking hat shiny. This is Annie McCubbin signing off from Why Smart Women. See you later. This episode was produced by Harrison Hess. It was executive produced and written by me, Annie McCubbin.